There are 5 pro-lifers who protested outside an abortion clinic who are facing 11 years in federal prison for their protest. 11 years, and these are men and women who have families who were protesting the brutal murder of unborn babies, and they're facing 11 years in prison. So 5 pro-lifers have been found guilty of rescuing babies from abortion, and they're now facing over a decade in prison. This is from Life News. 5 pro-life advocates have been found guilty of violating a federal law protecting abortion centers and now face the possibility of 11 years in prison. Lauren Handy, Will Goodman, John Hinshaw, Heather Idoni, and Herb Garrity were each found guilty on all counts the Biden administration brought against them for allegedly violating the FACE Act. The jury found all of the defendants guilty of both charges they faced in court, and they were taken into custody. They will stay in federal prison until sentencing, which will take place after a second trial starting September 6th for the other pro-life advocates involved in the rescue. The trial began August 9th, and the 5 pro-life advocates were charged with conspiracy and violation of the FACE Act, which was signed into law in 1994 by former President Bill Clinton. The FACE Act, which stands for Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, prohibits individuals from attempting to injure, intimidate, or interfere by use of force, threat of force, or physical obstruction with anyone obtaining or performing an abortion. The pro-lifers on trial conducted a rescue at the Washington Surgery Clinic operated by the notorious late-term abortionist Cesar Santangelo, who was busted by a live-action undercover investigator for admitting that he would not help a child with life-saving efforts if that child, he or she, survived a late-term abortion. The abortionist emphatically stated that a nearby hospital's efforts to save the life of a child he was trying to abort was, quote, the stupidest thing they could have done. Lauren Handy and Herb Garrity cited those live-action videos as the reason for the rescue and protest at the abortion business because of the concern babies might be left to die. They chained themselves to the entrance of the abortion center in an attempt to stop abortions. Life News says last March, some of the rescuers currently on trial were given 115 aborted babies by the driver of a medical waste van outside Santangelo's late-term abortion facility. The babies were well-developed, second and possibly third trimester. Their remains are still in a vault at the DC Medical Examiner's office. It's so grotesque. In October of 2020, about 2 months after the remains were obtained, the 9 pro-lifers blocked the entrance of the abortion facility to protest the abortion. However, this is where it gets really interesting, U.S. District Judge Colleen Collar-Coatley, a Clinton nominee, would not allow the video to be used as evidence. She also prohibited the defendants from arguing that their actions were protected by the First Amendment or were committed in defense of a third person and unborn children. This is the pro-life attorney for one of the defendants. In Lauren's mind, any person she can prevent from going into that clinic is a person whose baby will not be born alive and left to die. Think about this for a second. This judge prohibited the defendants from arguing that their actions were protected by the First Amendment when I think it's pretty clear that they were, or that they were committed in defense of a third person. She prohibited them from stating the scientific reality that unborn babies are human beings and that second and third trimester babies are viable, that they can survive outside the mother's womb. This seems to be a gross miscarriage of justice, but all of that to say is there's no such thing. This is one of the things, I don't know if I've changed my mind about, but I've come to recognize more clearly in recent years, is there's no such thing as neutrality in our country, in institutions, in our government. It's either the Democrats' beliefs or Republican, or the values of conservatives, the values of the right, the values of Republicans. It's one or the other. One is going to prevail. Just like in public schools, children are going to be taught that communism is good, or they're going to be taught that communism is bad. They're not just going to be taught, well, what is the definition of communism? That never happens. That's not reality. And this is also the reality of what the left wants to do to us. So my position, a harsh position though it might be, that women who abort their babies should be held criminally liable for that. What's the alternative? That pro-life advocates who are protesting outside abortion clinics not only are not allowed to do that, but aren't allowed, after they've been charged by the federal government, to claim that their speech is protected under the First Amendment and that they're doing this in defense of a third person, that unborn baby. There's no such thing as neutrality.